what this is. Yeah, I was thrown off by a couple of stocks, mainly, SONN, right, was one, and then there was another one like SQFT, I expected SONN to do what SQFT did, but SQFT did what SONN did, right? Both of these tickers over here, okay, wait, what? Both of these tickers over here for me, they I mean, they both have very explosive potential. All right, don't get me wrong. Right, look at the daily average volume for this. S1 is not that much, not very low, right? Because they recently just ran, but this action over here in pre-market definitely put it on top watch. All right, but so yeah, I would say this is not something. I mean, I expected this to move what SQFT did because of the catalyst that it had, but instead SQFT, the one without a catalyst, which also had very interesting pre-market action, right, made the move instead. And it's cool, right? We did trade this as well after, but for me, this is definitely something that comes to a point of you needing to adapt to the changes to the market. One of the reasons why also I would say that this morning there was a whole lot of or rather it's a little tricky because there was a lot of tickers running, right? There was a lot of tickers running, and it's like what I told you guys just now, right? When there are a lot of tickers running, what happens is that you become the volume becomes very spread out, and you don't really have a lot. I mean, you don't really have a lot of focus, and it might seem like the focus is on one trigger, and maybe 10 minutes later it shifts to something else, and it makes things very very tricky. Okay, it's like what I said just now, right? If you have one restaurant in that area, everyone goes over there. But if you have 20 restaurants in the area, then some restaurants might get the piece of the pie, and then not. There is no monopoly. Right, essentially that's what happened today. But no, let's dive right into it, right? I think one of the important things is adapting, right? You understand that the market is shifting a little bit. Maybe it changes back tomorrow, but at least just for the start of this week, we can see that there is a lot of movers. It's not like it's slow, but there is a lot of it, and it becomes very dispersed, right? There's a difference, yeah. For for us right now, okay, for at least for the current market state, at least for today, what happened is that there is a lot of moves. All right. It's not like there were no moves. It wasn't like it was slow, but there was a lot of moves that made everything seem slow. All right. So that's the difference. So that means the momentum of the market is still there, but there's a lot of emphasis about rotation, or a lot of emphasis about trying to switch around, right? Not staying stagnant to one stock. And maybe after that, when everything died off, then you can start to identify what is good and what's not good, and focus on it for the EOD session. All right. So we talk about the first trade for today, which is AIF, right? So for AIF for me, so AIFF, right, had a very nice move, but you guys can see, I want you guys to always understand this, okay? No matter how good a stock looks like, no matter how good something runs, right? I think one thing you gotta understand is that when always have a plan. Not every single play is gonna go crazy, right? If it doesn't work out, you need to cut it. You need to take, and you also need to take your profits on the way up, because not every single play is gonna go crazy, right? If you look at this on a different market situation, maybe this thing could go to 5, 6, 7, right? But if we don't lose the trend, sure, we hold on to it. But if we lose the trend, then I mean, you look at where it went today. It made new lows, which is not the nicest looking chart, right? But at the start of the day, this is what we're trading, right? So 405, this ticker had some news, okay? This ticker had some news. You can see that I have my levels marked out here, right? I have my levels marked out here. Price went up for a bit, and then it pulled back, retested my levels I drew on the line. Let me show you guys where this is at. So if you look at this on the daily chart, this is kind of like my, you can see, right? There is basically a key level, right? A key point of interest on this zone over here, right? These two lines over here, which is exactly what I was looking at, right? So price pull back to that level, form two wicks bouncing off that. And then once I saw volume coming in, right, I wanted to take my entries over here, but it was way too quick for you guys. So I needed to wait for a key level breakout instead. And I think this morning there was a lot, right? There was a lot of tickers that was running crazy. SQFT is one, SONN is one, right? So I thought maybe, there might be some kind of volume flow over here. And honestly, I think we did do really good. 1 second, guys, 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Okay, all right. So hold on one second. All right, so what happened is that price is about to breach through this. Now, this 200 EMA for me is always a big key level, right? So I always want to see price kind of breach through that. Now, if I were to bring the price down, right, what you guys can see is that this thing is 402. So it's very, very, I like to round the numbers up. I could say $4 breakout and stuff like that, but I like to round it up since price is going up. But you can see ideally this is what the key level is going to be at, right? Which is why I told you guys to watch for the 405 breakout to scalp, right? So 405 breakout to scalp, what does it mean, right? It means that you add not on this candle, not on the candle that break 405, right? You add on the next candle, right? Which is somewhere around here. 4.1s, 4.2s down all the way, it doesn't matter, right? Stop loss is under 380, right? And then you look for that pop up to scalp your move. Okay, now again, doesn't matter how high it's going to go, right? Everyone, your next question is, how do I know when to take profits? The question is that, and that really comes with knowing when or how high do you think the stock's going to go, right? And nobody will know how high a stock's going to go. All right, nobody will know how high a stock's going to go. That's the truth, right? And that's something you guys have to come to terms with. Okay. But one main thing is that as long as the move, right, kind of makes new highs, right, and also kind of matches with what you're risking, right? So maybe if let's say you're risking around 10, 20, 30 cents a share, right? At least if you get that 30 cents move to the upside, it's something you can definitely secure some profits. Okay. So I unfortunately this thing couldn't go higher is because you can see, right? Is because after that there was another move on ALBT, right? And then after ALBT, there was there. So there was a lot of movers, there were a lot of volume rotation happening, right? Which again, it makes it very difficult to keep focus on one stock because I got to alert so many different stuff, and you guys as well, right? You guys got to jump around here and there, and it's very tricky. So if you look at this for ALBT, right? Why did this die? Because ALBT had the volume. Okay, look at this. All right, so look at the timing over here. ALBT went from 280 to 796. You see, right? It's not like there are no movements. There are movements, but and crazy movements, right? SQFT is one, but the thing is, there's so many of them, right? It makes it very tricky. Okay, it's not like the market's slow. It's just that there's too many. It makes the market very tricky, and it's not like every single one of them is going to hold up. Right? Look at how ugly this thing is. Right? If you okay, look at the time over here for AIFFL. When did this thing start to die? We take from this top wick over here, right? From 757, look at the time at the bottom. 757 all the way down to 803 is where the price started to rotate volume out of this into, right? Remember, 757, 803, right? So over here at, what is this? This is 801. You see? Right, 801, this thing started to move up already. At 803, this is around here, which is exactly where um AIFF died. But you see, this comes to point, right? When you trade pre-market, this is something you have to be very mindful of. Because if ALPT doesn't come along, if DARE didn't come along, right? If let's say these companies don't drop news, okay, is there a possibility that AIFF continues to go crazy? I would say yes. Why not? It's a low floater, right? It had news, it had a catalyst, right? They had two news over here. One of them is the latest commercial agreement, right, which is pretty decent. And then the other one is teams up with German hospitals to study rare brain disorders. So there's two news, there's two catalysts on this. If ALBT didn't come along, if DARE didn't come along, right, there's a high chance that we could probably see a much crazier move over here, because this is the only thing that was flowing at that point of time. But the market today had to put out two different runners, right? ALBT going from 285 to 7. I mean, this is a whole lot of volume, isn't it? Right. And then after this thing move, right? What happened to DARE? What happened to DARE? Right? DARE also made a move, but DARE made a move first, and then it pulled back, right? And then when ALBT started breaking down, right? When ALBT started breaking down, which is from 805 to 811, DARE started to, right? Started to 805. Look at this. This is the 805 candle for DARE. You guys remember the ALBT 805 candle? Let me just put it side by side. This is 805 candle for ALBT. This is the 805 candle for DARE. And you look at the direction that happened afterwards, right? One went all the way down, the other one went all the way up. You see that, right? One went down, the other one went up, right? Volume rotation. But again, if Dare didn't do this, is there a chance that this thing will go higher? Sure. Or maybe this thing pulls back and then volume goes back into AIFF. You understand? Right? So because Dare was so strong, right? Dare started to hold its own strength. And that's why it continued to make new highs. By the point of time, there was way too much going on, right? I mean, I could just take my position over here in respect to the plan. That's completely fine too, right? But what I wanted to see was for this to break the $10 level, which is a psychological level, but also 995 is a daily level breakout that I needed to see. So for me, I didn't want to pay attention. I don't want to be a part of the chops, right? I didn't want to be a part of the chops, right? 995, look at this. Weekly expansion level, very big for Dare, right? Weekly expansion level, very, very big level over here. So that's why for me, I didn't want to be part of a chops after seeing whatever happened with AFF and Dare and ALBT. It's like you got to be lucky as to which stock news that you pick. Right? Remember what I said last week? When stock runs on news, it's not a guarantee it might run crazy, isn't it? Right? It's really a hit or miss. Some of them pop really crazy and goes even and continues even higher. Some of them pops for a bit and dies all the way down. And you don't want to be this is pretty much just guessing, right? So I didn't want to be a part of I didn't want to be a part of the chop, so I waited for it to settle down and I saw it there, right? So the only way for me to confirm if I can take a play that is moving on really strong momentum is if, let's say, it continued to break its key levels. Unlike AIFF didn't do that, ALBT didn't do that, right? So I wanted to wait for their 995 weekly breakout, rounding off $10 breakout for a play. So look, guys, sure, price hit 1040. Did we break 10 though for a play? No, right? We did not break 10 for a play. All right. Ideally speaking, that is just how it is, right? You remember, look at this over here, $10 breakout. Okay. Did we ever break 10? Price moved above 10, but we never broke $10 for a play. So if that's the case, I'm not touching it. All right. I know of some people over here who are in this without stop loss and ended up having to be able to sell at $3, right? And you guys have the mindset of, oh, because previous week when I held off the trend that broke down, it recovered. You see, if you start doing that, right, then you're very reliant on you being lucky. And you know luck doesn't bring you so far. You will start being very reliant on you being lucky. Right? That's not how it's supposed to be. If I were to take my position over here, right, I would have my stop loss underneath 783 over here, or 787. Right? Because this is where the trend has broken down. Right. This is where the price bounced off, but you can see the price couldn't break out for new highs and the trend broken down. So I wasn't very interested in these chops over here. So that's why I did not really re-alert any entries on this. I keep it simple, right? If you want to play this, wait for this to break to $10 and we play it. If not, avoid. And look at this, right? You could have dodged a very nasty, price action over here and moved into something else. Okay, so very important, right? But I would say that's one of the reasons why today was a little bit trickier. Okay, it doesn't mean that the market's slow. I think the market is still moving very healthily, but in terms of the selections that we have is definitely a lot, which is why it makes things looks a little bit slower than usual. Right? Not slower but usual, but a little bit more confusing in that sense. Okay. All right, so we move on, right? VC was pretty much another one that, again, right, had the volume rotation, isn't it? I didn't really talk about this because, I took this, right? So this was another one that had volume rotation. You can see that, right? It had volume rotation, right? And but you can see it didn't really sustain. Why? Because it went over to ALBT. It went over to there. No, I would say this one went over to there. Okay, this one went over to there. So I took my entries around 1.78, 1.77, right? I wanted to take dips at 1.5s, but it never really happened. This is at 823, which is right on this candle over here. I was adding this on the way up. The next candle hit 210, exactly on my level. And then when price went down, I told you guys, you know what? This is still holding on. If we see dare not continue, we might see, this is what I wanted, right? What I wanted was for this to kind of base, right? On this. This is a pretty nice candle. Look at that. But unfortunately, we couldn't clear 1.9. And 1.9 is a very big level, right? It's a very, very big level for me. Why? Because that is my daily 200 EMA. You see that? The red line over here. And this is also the level that I use to play the 405 breakout. Right? This is so you can see how, you can see how there's a consistency to what I'm looking at. And this is what you are supposed to be doing. There should be some sort of consistency to what you're looking at. Right. Nice bounces and stuff, but again, when you see a ticker break down, or when you see a ticker break down and it starts to recover, and you see it trying to knock that 1.9 level three times you see upper wicks over here. What does it mean? Right? It means that we're not, we don't have enough buying pressure to break out from this, right? Sellers are still taking control. But it doesn't mean that it's going to break down. No, right? It doesn't mean it's going to break down. It just means that we have difficulty breaking out. So whenever you see candles like this, or wicks, right, long wicks over a key level, what's the next thing you want to look at is to make sure that we don't see this type of candle. Because we see this type of candle after this, what it's trying to tell you is that price is trying to break out over here, right? But it couldn't break out from it. Buyers hit exhaustion point and then sellers to control, right? That's exactly what happened. But sometimes what can happen is that price attempt to break out, okay, price pull back, but we still hold the trend, and then we attempt it again, and then we had a squeeze move, squeezing out all these people over here. So there is no such thing as, so because 3 weeks, blah blah blah, means that it's going to break down. No, it doesn't look good, correct? But you still want to wait for the candle for confirmation, and you can see this is a clear sign. You need to get the fuck out because it doesn't. There's no strength anymore. All right, there is completely no strength anymore. Okay, so for me, because there was a whole lot, right? There was a whole lot of movement happening, right? We have SQFT. This ticker has huge range to the upside and to the downside. Right? It was very messy. There was no news over here as well. SONN was just going apps. The SONN was also having a huge bulk of news too, right? So for me, my mindset was, hey, you know what? I want to sit into something that's a little bit more stable, a little bit less, I would say less noisy. And then I'll look to see if I can get a better position on something else for market open. And at the point of time, AIFF, or sorry, not AIFF, what's the ticker? VC was the only one that was consolidating nicely. All right. That was consolidating nicely over here. Okay, it wasn't really breaking down, right? It wasn't really breaking out as well. We did have a mini downtrend breakout over here. But and then we also had a pretty nice base over here as well that was kind of bouncing off and stuff. So I was hoping for us to kind of get the volume on open to push out on this. And you see, this is where I wanted to let you guys know. When you add anything to open, okay, you will not know what's going to happen, because when there are so many stocks running in the market today, you're not going to know which stock is going to have the volume to go. Because look, if I knew that stock A is going to have all the volume running into open, right, I'll put everything inside, right? If I knew, but the thing is, I don't know. Okay, but if you have to choose between two tickers that has the volume to go for market open, you have a 50% chance of picking the right one. If let's say you don't wait for confirmation. But what if you have to choose between 10 tickers? Then you only have a 10% chance of picking the right one. Right? You don't really have a lot of chances of picking the right ticker with let's say volume flow. Right. So, but besides that, the reason why I took this was because this is pretty calm compared to the other setups that went absolutely insane. So for me, I want to pick something that has pretty low risk, right? To me, this is pretty low based on the movement that we've seen across the board. This was pretty low at the point of time. I'll look for a 160 to 170 first. Okay. But when on open, I see this kind of happen. Price tried to reclaim this a bit, but you can see we had zero threat of actually reclaiming any of the EMAs over here, right? The 21 and 50 price was underneath that. What did I say? Do you have to stick to the entire plan again? You don't have to. Raise yourself to under 140, reduce your risk. So initially speaking, if you are planning to lose $100 on this trade, right, this time you raise your stops up, so you only lose $50, right? So you only lose $50 over here. So remember what I said before, right? Not making a trade is not something you should be embarrassed of, right? Not winning on a trade is something you should be embarrassed of. But if you're able to reduce your risk because you feel like something's not really holding on, you cut it instead of taking a normal size loss, I think that's a win as well. Because when you keep losses small, you can move into something else and you can try to make it back from there. All right. So SONN was the one that had my biggest loss today. I think I was down around $3,000 on this. 3.7 actually. So I was down on 3.7 on SONN. So what happened over here was, this ticker had all the Bitcoin bullshit news, right? And we also had a falling wedge breakout going to open as well. And this was really the only ticker that was running it open. Everything else is pretty much not showing strength, right? It halted up twice as well. So I accumulated a small position over here at 818s on open, right? Around 1,000 shares for me is kind of small. Okay, and then but my stop loss was under 15 initially speaking, right? My stop loss was under 15, right? So I was ready to risk around $3,000 on this trade, right? For me, okay, for me again, all right, depending on your size, if you're planning to, what would I say? If you're planning to risk $100 on this trade, then when you add an $18 and you have a $3 risk, right? You are supposed to only be buying 33 shares. And so if it doesn't work out, you lose $100. Remember what I said just now. No matter how big your risk is, right? No matter how big your risk is, you need to make sure that when it doesn't work out, you still lose based on what your plan is. So you size in based on how much you want to lose, not how much you want to make, right? Because if you size it based on how much you want to make over here, man, you're going to be taking a huge loss. Okay, so losses should still be controlled on your end. All right. So I took a small position over here to start. Price went down, halted down a little bit. I see a little bit of bounces here. I added a little bit more, but we couldn't reclaim VWAP, right? Saw price was weak. I closed the rest at 15xx after the averaging down. And then I took a 3K plus loss, 3.7K loss and move on. Right? Because this thing was weak to me already. Right? Price went up a little bit, right? Sure, we did attempted to bounce off here, but we couldn't break VWAP twice. And this is a double top at VWAP too. I don't like that. That kind of action is very, very weak. And what else was, and at the point of time, what was actually moving? It was this ticker, PMN, right? It's a ticker PMN. And, I had a lot of I was very, very optimistic about this. I would say that I was very excited about this ticker. Why? Now, first off, right, we talk about, what ticker has explosive potential. Now, at this point in time, right, when SONN didn't work out, right, remember, SDST wasn't really doing much of anything as well. Okay. SQFT, okay, was curling up a little bit, but this one didn't really have news. So I tried not to touch this as much as I can. Right. SONN was breaking down, we know that. VC was breaking down, we know that. So there was not a whole lot of options for me to look at, right? And then there came along this one, PMN, a new ticker, right? It had a news in pre-market already. Okay, basically, it wasn't anything big. It was basically just a H.C. Wainwright initiate coverage on this company, announces a price target of $4. Price went down, consolidated with VWAP, and then there was just a strong surge of volume breaking through VWAP, and this shit just went absolutely insane. Now, why was I interested in this? Now, number one, this ticker, low daily average volume. Okay, and you have to keep in mind that this thing has a low daily average volume even when the stock is at 39 cents. And right, when the stock is cheap, right, when the stock is cheap, you're actually able to buy more shares. So there is no reason for the average price to be low. So when the daily average is still low over here, it means that this stock is rarely touched, right? I don't think anyone has ever touched this on the grand scheme of things, apart from today, right? You can see it's been rare. It's not something that people talk about much. So it's very fresh. So that means that when volume hits this thing could go. Remember, no guarantees, could go absolutely insane. So after seeing everything die down and seeing how fresh of a ticker this is with a $4 price target by H.C. Wainwright, again, I do not trust all these analyst targets, but like I said, it provides good sentiment, right, for a trade. Okay, so I told you guys I'll be watching this for open for more over 110 to 115. Either that or I'll be accumulating all the dips and stop on the 65 cents. Right, 65 cents is basically this stop gap over here at the bottom. Right, so I have my stops underneath that. I'll be accumulating all the dips. Now on open, okay, you see, this is where these plays over here are very quick to execute, right? It's impossible for me to alert you guys. I'll tell you guys one thing, right? Look at this. When price open up over here, okay, right? Remember, I told you guys I'll be cleaning the dips over here. This is what, 947, right? And 948, price open, 87 cents. We didn't get the breakout. Price went all the way down to 73 cents. What did I say? I'll take all the dips, isn't it? I'll be taking all the dips. I'll have my stop loss on 65 cents, right? So you can add all these dips over here. And then on that same very exact candle, if you guys were actually watching it, price went all the way to $1, 105. I mean, that itself, right? It's a 50% move, right? In less than a minute, right? 70 cents plus, depending on what you add, it could be a 30% move as well in less than a minute. You're not taking it? There's no way, right? I took some profits off here. I was quite heavy into this, I would say, right? It was a very, I would say, because of the criteria, right? Low daily average volume, something that's not really touched, $4 price target, nothing else was running the market as well. This was quite fresh, at that point of time. So price had a nice move. I thought oh my God, this is definitely gonna go insane. Maybe we might get that ABV type move, right? Because, around the same price range. And then price pulled back. Now, this is the part where I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to raise my stops, right? I've secured my profits. There's no reason for me to stay through this 65 cents anymore. So I'm going to raise my stops. So I let it settle down for a bit. I want to see how it consolidates above VWAP. And it consolidated very well. So that's why I told you guys, it might be a little bit choppy. So I'll have my stops under 83 cents after getting that information, right? Which is under here, right? Under 83 cents, which is here, this line, which price clearly never broke down. And then we halted up again and we hit 1.25, right? Which is what I wanted. And I was very excited to see this, go to make new highs. I wanted to see it hold up again for us to really get that traction, but it never did. You see, no matter how excited I was, no matter how good something looks, right? It doesn't mean that it's gonna go your way. Sometimes the market just might just be really slow. Because at this time, what was running, it was SQFT, right? It was SDST that wasn't letting go for the volume. It was pretty much sitting in this wedge over here, consolidating throughout the entire day. Look at that. Keep trying to break out. Couldn't. Went down. Couldn't break down as well. Attempted to. 382 million shares. So no matter how good it looks, I still take all my profits on the way up. I still take some profits on the way out. I never take it for granted. Because nothing is guaranteed, right? Nothing's ever guaranteed. And then when price lost this, I closed the rest of my position. It's sad. I wanted more, but if it doesn't go my way, I'm not gonna get on my way and be like, nah, I'm gonna hold on to this and hope for this to go crazy. Right? You see? I mean, the plan's been given to you guys. I told you guys I'll be accumulating all the dips, every single one of them. Price went all the way down to 73 cents, and on the same candle, it popped all the way to 106. That's crazy, isn't it? That's a beautiful move, right? In seconds. If you guys execute, look, this was a 30% move in less than a minute. That's great, no? Right? So and over here, see, this is also another quick one, right? I cannot really be like telling you guys what I added over here because sometimes they wick very quickly. Look at this, right? If I were to say at PMN, I added at 75 cents, 73 cents, or 77 cents. By the time I send it out, you guys will probably see this at 97 cents. How can you guys add that? It's impossible, right? But that's why I gave you guys a plan. Either break out from this or taking all the dips. Stop loss under 65 cents. You see the plan, respect it. The levels are there. It goes under 65, get out. Because I'm going to be in this as well, right? I'm going to be in this as well. Okay, and you can see it's very nice, right? It's a very nice move over here. And then, after that, I again, you see, I didn't really take my eyes away from this. I felt that this thing still had a lot of potential, right? So, but the only problem I have when I was playing this today, when I was trading this today, was the fact that SDST was trapping a whole lot of volume, wasn't really doing anything, right? You can see it wasn't breaking down, but it sure as hell wasn't breaking down as well. And this SQFT was also very choppy, but it wasn't breaking down as well. And it's a very expensive stock too. All right. So that's why, for me, PMN, I felt like, hey, if SQFT started to break down, if SDST, right, that couldn't break out from this over here started to break down, hopefully we get some volume to PMN into a full-blown reversal back into new highs. So that was what I was looking for. So over here, I got my dips, right? I got my accumulation at 76 cents, stop loss under 65. I wanted to have my stop loss under 65 cents. Okay, so around there. And 83, 85 cents is the first level for me, right? Because this is where the again the rejection was at, right? This is where all the rejection was at. You're not even at 60 cents, maybe even 80 cents and shit. Okay, but VWAP is 85 cents. So that's a very, very big key level for me. And look, right? Look, this is fast, which is why I keep telling you guys, you gotta use active trader. You gotta be glued to the screen, or rather, you gotta be active. If you want to take a position over here, you make sure you watch your screen, right? Because sometimes you might be lucky, you don't watch the screen, this thing goes up. But what if it doesn't? You still want to be able to capitalize on that, right? So 76 cents, 1023. Okay, 76 cents, which is right here, right? Accumulation all the way down to 73 cents, low 70s, right? Stop loss on 65 cents. We got the pop all the way to 83 briefly, but anywhere near that 82s, I'm really ready to scale out. But then over here, you can see we just kept making this little small little downtrend. We couldn't break out from it. Why? SDST was taking all the volume. It wasn't breaking down. But it was slowly inching, right? It was slowly inching to break out. See that? It was slowly inching to break out. SQFT was trending up, right? And then because of these two, we just couldn't get the move that we want. So I had to close out the rest under 65 cents, which is pretty unfortunate. And I think I raised it up, right? I raised up to under 72 cents instead. We hit 68, we hit 83 cents. I took my profits, right? It wasn't much, but I raised up to 72 cents to keep it small green. On the re-entries over here, remember, my first trade was on this, so this was just re-entries for me. But I really wanted a bigger move on this. But seeing the condition of SDST and SQFT, it was difficult. It wasn't straightforward, I would say. Right? It could have been nice if these two break down, but this one break down instead. I have to respect it. I cannot fight. Remember, I don't want to be like, no, I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna stay in this forever. No, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Right? I have to get it out. Okay, so over here I started to be very uh I started to become a little bit confused between the ticker, right? SDST and SQFT. Like fuck this stuff, which is why I kind of combined this together. SQST, my bad. But you know, I I wasn't a huge fan of it at a point of time because the spread was very bad. But this is really one of the only tickets that was running. The reason why I did not really play SDST instead was because this thing felt very heavy. I did not want to be taking a position where I'm in at 53 cents, it runs to 55 and then it dumps down. You know, this thing felt very heavy, so I did not want to take this. At least over here, when I get the confirmation of the breakout, fine. But still, you can see it got stuffed. So that's where I got out, right? But this is also the reason why I started with 30% size only, because I felt this thing felt very trappy, right? You could see so many wicks, right? We attempted to break out so many times, we couldn't. And when we did, there was not much follow through, even though there was so much volume on this. So this thing felt very heavy. But you know, I thought this was not going to break out. It still broke out. So I took 30% size just to see. What I wanted to see was price pulling back, right? Over here, consolidate and bounce to add more of the 30, on top of the 30%. Have my stop loss underneath this trend line over here, and then see whether we can get into this gray box, right? Which is a gap, right? And maybe making new highs and shit. But over here, prices immediately sliced down. Why? SQFT took the volume instead. All right, SQFT took the volume instead, which is also the reason why after I get my confirmation that, hey, you know what? Over here, I wasn't in, right? I wasn't in, right? I saw SQFT halted up, you know, I saw SDST broke out and stuff, but it started to die, right? Once SDST started to die, right? That's where I knew, you know, SQFT might be the runner for now. Again, things might change. Maybe we get something new, you know? But over here, we got a very nice breakout. I took my entries on open. Stop loss is going to be under 14 for SQFT, right? I was watching this on open and dips and adding dips, right? 1485, my main watch to 1054. When price opened up, I took my entries over here, right? 18s. I was planning to take dips, never happened. Price went all the way up to 21s, 22s. I took my profits. Price went down again. But this time, again, look, since I've taken my profits over here, do I need to have my stop loss on at 1485? No, I do not need that. Now I raise my stop loss under, this is the SBET, right? 1755. I raised it up because this is where the price was bouncing off from, around there. So I just raised my stops up instead of 1485 because I wanted this pullback first. But since we have already made the move, if price would go from 21 back to 14s, do you think it's still good? Probably not. So you raise your stops up according to the price moving up as well. Right, so that over here is still a pretty good move, but at the end of the day, this thing didn't have a catalyst. I wasn't expecting much, but still a very nice dollar range moves off 18s, you know, for $2 to $3 move over here. All right, took a small loss on STST because SQFT took the move instead. So it is what it is. Okay, I wanted that move on STST, to be honest. I really wanted that move, but I mean, when you see a candle going off like that and breaking through this trend line that's been holding throughout the entire day, I don't see a reason why you should really just stay in this and hope for something to happen, because there's a reason why the trend held for so long into a breakout. If it breaks down from it, it means that the current intraday structure is done. Okay. All right. And then for the rest of the, this is all like, quick trading and stuff, right? For the rest of the day over here, BMGL, I took this over here for a quick move, right? One of the only movers as well at the point of time. Everything else was dying over here. So on this note, okay, what happened was I saw the price break through this 4-hour structure, right? And then price went up. Now, when price went down, you can see over here, we have this test on the 21 EMA trend line. Okay. When price went down over here and formed into this candle, right? What I did was take my entries at 420s. I was in at 425 and stuff. I think even after my alert, this thing was at 421.2, and then price made new highs. Now, again, no news on this. Chinese name over here, right? Today was, a lot of like sketchy moves and shit. So I was trimming as much as I can. I was trimming as much as I can. I wasn't really taking a whole lot. I wasn't, for sure, I was not playing around, right? And I was about to write the 21 EMA trend line until it broke down, because that's where my current trend bounce is at. Right, we tried to bounce off here, but once we lost this, I closed my position to keep it green. All right, no reason to stay in this anymore. All right, no reason to stay in this anymore. Okay, and then after that, I waited again. I continued to wait for any sort of good setups. I saw TROO, right? It wasn't breaking down, even though it was a Chinese name at the point of time. Remember, at that point of time, um, what was it? Sorry, I saw this, holding up for the point of time, right? So over here, you can see that there was a very nice trend. Okay, I wasn't looking at this trend, by the way. I was looking at this. Let me show you guys. I had to adjust it, but do you just see how nice this is? Right, price is making high lows over here, right? Price is making high lows. We keep inching up as well. Keep trying to break through VWAP over here as well. So for me, it's like this thing, had a move from 72 cents to 242. Again, right? This is also another reason maybe why PMN couldn't go, because the fuck, and we have an intraday runner that just ran up like that. You see another injection. So we had a very nice uptrend over here. Every single time when price taps this trend line, go up, taps the trend line, look at this candle. Tap this trend line, look at this candle. Tap this trend line, look at this candle. It's nice. It's very nice. The risk is pretty low as well. So I took my entries at 165 over here. Stop loss on the 150, right? Which is the bottom of this trend line. As you guys can see, this is the plan. And at this very same exact candle, we actually halted up. Hey, now I did not expect this to halt up, right? But it was very, very tight. But again, I think some of you guys were asking, right? I tried to get filled as 165 as well. I couldn't. Now listen, guys, I said this many times before, right? If I'm in at 165, okay, you can try to get the same entries as I do on dips, sure. But sometimes it might not happen. All right, sometimes it might not happen. And what I want you guys to understand is that even if you're added at 168 and 169, that's fine too, right? Because look, right, I'm not looking to sell this at 170. I'm not looking to sell this at 171. Okay. If you're at 169, 168, that's completely fine too. I'm pretty sure there was time for you guys to be adding at 168, because after I looked my stuff, I always watch the candles to see if the price is actually still there within the ad zones. Because if it's not in the ad zones, I need to give you guys another reentry alert, right? So gave you guys the levels. We actually hit over here 188. Actually, we made new highs on this, which is pretty good. But then Chinese name being a Chinese name with news, right? It wasn't great. Once we broke the trend, you could see it became resistance. Price went all the way down. There was no need for any sort of reentries and stuff, because it just wasn't looking good anymore, right? So we almost make new highs over here, right? Price pulled back. Now this is where you see I always like to write the trend. I took my profits on the way up. Okay, we made new highs. I took out more over here. That somewhat couldn't break through the intraday highs. Now price pulled back. Now this is where people start to be afraid, right? They think, should I close my entire position? Look at the trend. right? Now your stop loss is under 162, right? Which is why I told you guys, right? Stop loss is not under 160, which is the bottom of the trend, right? So you continue riding it, and we got new highs, which is a pretty amazing. But again, like I said, it's a Chinese name. I wasn't expecting much, so it is what it is. And then throughout the rest of the day, I see nothing, right? I don't see anything. So for me, it was like, you know what? Fuck it. No need to force. Right? Today was definitely one of those days where your discipline is put to the test, right? To see if you could um to see if you can definitely 1 second. Stay, not adapt to the market, right? I know last week, when something runs like bam, let me get in. But today was a little bit slower. And you don't have to overtrade as well. Okay. Right. So there's that. All right. And it wasn't a slow day, but it was just a lot of options that made things very confusing and slow. Okay, so by the way, someone's asking, are these signals meant only for stock trading? Can they be used as options? So for mine, I do purely stocks. Right, options, we have a couple of alerts over here for you guys. Okay, you can see we got 50%, 100% on our option contracts today. So, and there's many other channels for you to figure out as well. So yeah. Okay, right. So this is my thoughts, my review for the market today. I think even in after hours right now, am I really seeing anything moving other than the fact that XAGE, pop like that? But yeah, how do you play? How do you play something like this? It's the only thing I see that has really a lot of potential is IBG, right? This is really the only thing that I like, right? Spreads the not lousy, spreads not lousy. The volume is pretty decent as well, right? This is the only thing I like for continuation. I probably wouldn't add it up here because again, there's no news on this. But look, grow ain't doing too much. SXTP pump and dump. Move not doing much either. CYCC, I don't know what the fuck this is. Right, so things are definitely slowing down a little bit. But again, you guys already know by now, right? When things slow down, what does it mean? It means that it needs to reset so that we can get another BMNR, another week of crazy runners again, right? Because the market cannot sustain that kind of movement. Think about before we got those crazy movements, right? Think about before we got those crazy movements. Was the market like that? It wasn't. It was actually pretty slow. It was actually pretty stable. It was pretty stable, right? But then after the money started, I mean the big moves started to come along, and that is where you can start to see a nice, I would say, you can start to see nice action going. It needs a reset. That's just how it is. Okay, all right. So yeah, momentum was definitely great today. It was okay, but it was just distributed between too many stocks. There's a lot of rotation, so it was definitely very tricky. But we'll adapt. We'll see how it goes for the next few days throughout the entire week. All right. Okay, so let's look at some questions.